Hey, are you hiring? If you answered yes, let XenTegra Staffing help staff your IT people needs. Head over to XenTegra.com/XenTegra Staffing to find out more. XenTegra Staffing, we can staff your IT people needs. Welcome to another edition of the Citrix Session with your hosts, Andy Whiteside and Bill Sutton, your source for all things Citrix.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 57 of the Citrix Session. I'm your host, Andy Whiteside. Bill, I know we just talked about it 2 seconds ago. 57, right?
57 is correct, yes.
I don't know if I have a short-term memory issue or I just have too much going on at one time all the time. Not sure which one. Well, I've got my guest hosts, plural, with me. I've got Bill Sutton, Director of Services. Bill, how's it going in services world here at XenTegra? And how was your holidays, too?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it's slow right now simply because of folks being off and things of that nature. So it'll pick back up in the first of the year. I feel certain.
Yeah, I'm hoping we have a tidal wave of stuff coming at us in Q1 and Q2 in terms of projects. I think a lot of people have just kind of been on hold through 2020, waiting to get to 2021 and vaccines and all the other stuff that go along with getting back to work. I hope that's the direction we're all headed.
That's what it looks like, at least for the next couple of months, anyways, based on forecasts and what I'm seeing coming in and closing. So I think we'll be in good shape at least through February. We'll see how March fleshes out.
Yeah. I'm going to do something a little odd here. Where are areas in the country that you're looking to bring on a Citrix consultant or two in 2021? I mean, might as well use this platform to ask that question.
Yeah, I think one is going to be the New York metro area. Beyond that, that's what's in the plan. But, that person could certainly execute on projects anywhere to the extent that we're able to do them virtually. But beyond that, not any other areas that are targeted. It'll largely be based on demand, obviously. And then I'm also looking to, at some point, to bring in a kind of a project coordinator type person that can help with scheduling and managing smaller projects. And then we'll still rely on another person for the more complex projects, at least initially.
Yeah. Okay. Well, great. I know we've done a good job building the team out here in Charlotte. And, we first started this company. We started XenTegra. It was the consultants traveled probably 50% of the time. I think in the last couple of years, we're down to about 90% travel. Most of the stuff's done remote, isn't it?
It's the vast majority of it's done remote. Even before COVID, it was very little travel. The only travel we might see, quite frankly, would be local Charlotte area travel or Florida travel, but not much overnight, jump on a plane, that sort of thing. Very little of that.
I think
of course, since COVID, that's almost dried up completely.
And a lot of our work is either in Canada or coming from consultants in Canada that work for us, a lot.
Yeah,
that's a great indicator. You don't even have to come across the border anymore to get work done. That's a good sign of where we live and this world today. And the pandemic's only tripled down on that.
That's right. I mean, it's the nature of what we do is to be able to enable remote connectivity. If we can't do it remotely, then there's something wrong with us.
Yeah, for sure. So Ben Rogers, local sales engineer here for Citrix in the Charlotte market. Ben, how's it going? How's your holiday?
Holiday was good, Andy. I do have a question for you two. 57 podcasts, 52 weeks in a year. Have you guys been on the grind with this through 2020, or is this a culmination over 2 years? Give the listeners a little history of 57 podcasts.
I think part of that is my nature as an individual is when I decide I'm going to do something, I do it. That's got some positives. That's also got some negatives. My family can point to some of the negatives. But pretty much, if we decide we're going to get something done, we do it. So we committed to doing several podcasts in 2021. We're going to have even more. And just like today, right, we didn't have a topic coming into it, but between myself and you and Bill, we went out and found one. Content and building a community is number one. And that is where this podcast and other podcasts kick into play. And with the number of weeks in the year, plus some special podcasts around maybe security concerns, vulnerabilities, updates that came out, we were able to throw a few more in. And then sometimes we just had more topics to talk about than we had enough weeks, so we just did them. I think that's where it came from.
Yep, I would agree.
Wow. That's an awesome accomplishment, to one, be able to do a podcast per week, because I know I've only done the last quarter with you. And even for me, it's been interesting to be on one every week to keep the mind flowing and the skills sharp. But I commend you guys to doing 57 within 2020. That's a big number to do one a week and then to do multiple a week. And I know you guys are starting to cover other topics like VMware and some other partnerships that you guys have. So good job, man. I commend you guys for that.
Well, it's actually really easy. It's like if you have something you enjoy doing that's a sport that you also get exercise in. It's like my wife does fitness athletic conditioning classes every day, and she's extremely excited when she goes to bed about the class she's going to do at 7 or 8 o'clock in the morning. For her, it's not working out. It's just something she enjoys to do. Same thing for me when it comes to wake surfing or snowboarding or other things. That's really the answer here is if you just enjoy doing it, like we're going to do here, we're going to learn something and round ourselves out a little bit. It's actually pretty easy to get up and do it. Bill, any comments on all that?
No, I would agree. I'm not as athletic as you guys are, but I do spend a lot of time doing other things that I'm committed to. So that's really what it boils down to, and that spills over into work, or work spills over into that. I'm not sure which way it goes.
Well, here's another thing to look at it from this perspective. I've got 2 kids that are in high school, seniors. I've got another kid that's a sophomore, and we talk about what they're going to do when they grow up, and they've been so committed to their athletics and, more importantly, their education, that I have no doubt, as long as they don't give up on their commitment to learning and being responsible adults, that they're going to be successful. That's why I try to tell them that if you've got those 2 things down, you're ahead of 90 to 95% of the people out there. It amazes me, guys. I'll share this with you. The frustration I see for people that probably not our listeners, because if you're listening to this podcast, you're trying to better yourself. But the amount of people that go out there and they just start their career and they just coast from that point on. Yep. I tell my kids all the time that the learning starts when you get your first job, because you're going to learn how to do that job, how to be better at that job, and how to do the next job that you don't even know is coming from that moment on. It doesn't stop when you get your degree.
Absolutely. And of course, as you know, Andy, I was a career changer. I went from the accounting business to the IT business. And so that it's been a constant process of learning from the day I changed until today and beyond. So I'm always trying to learn something new. And those that do are the ones that I think really succeed.
Yeah, for sure. Well, let's jump in.
That's it. That's interesting you say that, Andy, because I think it's just a necessity. One of the things I've had the luxury of having children split far apart. So I have a 30-year-old and a 10-year-old, but I tell them both the same thing, man. Homework does not stop when you get out of school. And there's always, the 7 habits of highly effective people. One of them is, sharpen the saw. You got to constantly sharpen that saw. And I do believe that is something not only in your career, just in life, man, spiritually and emotionally. And you've always got to constantly trying to keep growing and growing beyond where you're at today. And so I hear you on your advice to your kids. I bought my son a remote control car for Christmas, and I didn't realize what I had bought, but what this has turned into is not only a marvelous thing for me and my son to go out into the baseball field and run this car, but this car is modular, and so we can take it apart, we can add parts to it. And so what this has done for me and my son is not only enjoyment of going to, run the car and watch the car run the course and everything, but also, we've had a problem with the car, and we had to take the wheel off the car. And so now it's a whole exploration of how this car is reverse engineered and how you take it apart and just seeing your kids grow and then trying to take advantage of that and going, this does not stop with today, man. This is constant throughout your life. That's an important thing to try to instill in your kids. And I assure you, like me, I just hope my sons take to that advice and carry that through to them for the rest of their lives and pass that on to their children. Because with you, man, I've noticed some people do just stop when they get out of school, and it amazes me.
Yeah. Yeah. Sometimes it's out of necessity, but it always should be out of desire to grow and continue to
exactly.
Keep going until you can't go, and then find other things to keep going. All right, so let's going back to this podcast and the concept here. We're taking blogs that we find interesting and reviewing those together as a group and sharing that with others, and providing people a different avenue for growing in their Citrix journey. So what we have here is a blog from the last couple of days, maybe even from today, and it says the top 10 what's new with Citrix Workspace. Benefits of 2020, and that's what we've decided to cover here today. I'm really kind of excited about it because it's going to recap a lot of things like we were talking about before we jump on the call. But number 10 on this list is identity provider integrations. Ben, you want to jump on that one and give your take on what Citrix has done in 2020 to add more identity providers into the workspace offerings, specifically workspace service offerings?
Well, this is a killer offering for companies that don't have existing ADCs or do not want the complexity of implementing an ADC in their environment. So what Citrix is doing is they're just building more functionality into the gateway service that allows the gateway service to interact with these other identity providers. Again, giving our customers more flexibility. And then what I like to tell customers is, now you're dealing with one pane of glass. So if you need to shift identity providers, or you need to add additional identity providers because of mergers or acquisitions, you don't have to reinvent the wheel. You're dealing with the pane of glass you're used to. You're just plugging in another branch into those identity sources. So really good benefit for our product and our customers, and also gives us some flexibility to be able to, pivot and adjust as the environments change and people move forward.
So, guys, would you say the number one goal for most organizations should be to move to an identity provider or two, but ideally one that can be flexible and plug-inable to all these different services, either from Citrix or others? Is that still a major challenge for companies out there?
I think it's a major challenge. Yes. I mean, obviously, most customers are using Active Directory today. But as you start interacting and getting into Office 365, and you've got an identity in Azure Active Directory, and being able to enable those to coexist and to work both with your Citrix environment and Office 365 and other environments is really where this identity provider piece comes into play, is being able to leverage a single identity provider that then is federated or integrated, if you will, with other providers to provide that seamless access and single sign-on capabilities, which is really what this is all about, is expanding the providers that are supported by the gateway to include, SAML 2.0 and Okta and some others. Plus, I know there's some things on the horizon coming that will enable customers to take this even further. But at the end of the day, I think it's important for customers to be aware of this and as they start their journey into Azure AD and other identity providers.
So, Bill, I'll pause you on the Azure AD comment, and we won't go into it here. I think we did on the previous podcast.
Yeah.
Azure, Microsoft has 4 or 5 different options, whether it's Active Directory extended into Azure AD, Active Directory Federated Services, Active Directory as a service, Active Directory. There's another one in there too. But anyway, we'll get back to that. So, Ben, any additional points on the identity provider integration before we move on to the next piece?
No, again, I think Bill brought up a good point. As you know, companies are doing Active Directory today, but they're getting pushed to move to Azure AD. This will definitely help them be able to do that and not have to reinvent the wheel. Again, bring that Azure AD into the branch as a branch, then slowly migrate off. Again, your window doesn't have to change. It's just a radio button in the Citrix Cloud environment. And, should help make companies a smoother transition trying to get to Azure AD if that's their end result.
Yeah, I'll jump in here just a second and just put in a plug, I guess, for the XenTegra services. This can be somewhat complex. It's not that overly complex, but it can get really confusing when you start talking about, okay, I have Active Directory and I have that synced using AD Connect and I have Azure AD and I want to get Citrix in the mix. There's settings that need to be changed on the Azure side. To Ben's point, it's pretty simple on the Citrix side, but when you start integrating these other identity providers, there's a lot that in some cases it might be as simple as a checkbox, but in a lot of cases it's more than that. And we do a lot of this and can definitely help customers navigate that complex landscape where it applies.
Well, and I'll add to that, there's caveats, regardless of the ways you're going, there are some best practices and some things to know, some things not to know. So as a former administrator, I can't tell you I always had those answers. I had the direction that we needed to go in, but it definitely took me sitting down with companies like XenTegra that did this day to day, that could tell me, here are the pitfalls you need to try to avoid, and here's probably the questions you are not asking that we need to be asking. So to your point, Bill, definitely is advisable to bring a partner like yourself in that knows some of these best practices that people like myself when I was an administrator wouldn't necessarily know, because I'm concentrating on the business I have at hand.
Yeah, exactly.
I think one interesting thing about the Citrix approach here is they're just trying to work with what you bring to the table,
right?
And continue to evolve that. There's some organizations, some other companies that are, not just trying to work with your identity, they're trying to be your identity provider, because in reality, that's a gold mine. If you can be that identity provider, that's not going to go away for a really long time. If you can create a subscription model around that, I think what Citrix has done is they've either come to the realization they're not going to be that, or they realize that there's value in not trying to own that space, and that's been that's good, because like Ben was talking a minute ago, you don't want to be confused. Okay, I want to work with your solution. Oh, I need to use your identity provider. No, but you can, but you should, but you don't have to. And Citrix is making it to where you don't. That's not really a conversation. It's okay. What do you have? What's your strategic direction? And then how can we integrate with that? So that's great. Number 9 on the list is Citrix Workspace integration with Microsoft Teams. Now that could be a very wide-ranging topic of things. Bill, you want to run with this one first?
Yeah, I think we actually did a podcast. I think I don't know which one, but it was a while ago, around Teams and the workspace, workspace with intelligence, or the intelligent workspace, whatever it's called today. And where you could integrate Teams into the workspace, or you could integrate the workspace into Teams, in the sense that when these micro apps generate a notification, that notification could go directly into the workspace and then be copied in Teams, or it can actually integrate such that the pop-up goes directly into Teams. So there's a real tight integration between these integrations, these workflow integrations, both in the Teams interface as well as in the workspace app interface itself. And that, I think that's really what they're talking about. It's more than just, does it work? Do they work together? They really integrate with one another, in the sense that the notifications can go back and forth, or they can natively be populated into either.
So let's talk about this for a second. Our listeners probably need to understand something. Maybe they already do. Citrix is leading with this workspace play, but so are other companies, including Microsoft. If you go to portal.microsoft.com, that gets you into your Office 365. To me, that's the digital workspace I use the most. Mm-hmm. At the same time, if I just went to Teams and a lot of that stuff would be plugged into there, I'd just skip the portal.office.com. And I think what Citrix, we did the podcast on, is really trying to do is I don't want to say hedging their bets. They're trying to play along, so that if you're going to go to Workspace, your Citrix Workspace, great. If you're going to use Microsoft as your workspace, Citrix wants to be tangible and a value there, so that's the intelligence piece that comes along with Citrix workspace can now interact with Teams as well. I think they're covering both sides of that. Ben, have you had any experience or conversations around this specifically?
Well, I just did a demo where for my demo warriors, I recreated an emergency room using Workspace Intelligence. And a pivotal part of that was getting Teams notification in my workspace. So during my demo, I was an ER doctor, and I was doing rounds. And part of those rounds were supporting a COVID MASH unit. And so one of the things that I demoed was one of the nurses in the MASH unit teaming me to ask me a question. And we did all this inside a Workspace, which was really cool. So my notification came up in Workspace that the nurse needed me. I selected that, start a team session. We were communicating with each other with inside of Teams. We finished the Teams communication. I went back to Workspace. I then had a notification from Workspace that I needed to complete something inside the EMR. So again, I agree with Bill that I see a very tight integration with Workspace. And if you're using Workspace to receive your notifications in your workflow, we tie very nicely into that. And that's where I think the big picture is with this, is that we want to get users using Workspace, that being their front end. We want to get micro apps feeding their workflow, and we want to make Teams part of that workflow. And we want it to be integrated so it doesn't feel like you're having to go into a separate app. It's just embedded in your workflow and inside the Workspace portal.
I don't know if either one of you guys caught the webinar Pete Downing did with Brian Madden the other day, but they touched on a lot of things that I've been thinking about for a long time, and that is the evolution of the desktop, the desktop screen on your computer turning into a workspace, an online workspace, and that's exactly what we're talking about here.
Right.
Bill and I have done several podcasts where we talked about the desktop with intelligence and how that has really turned into workspace with intelligence, becoming the desktop of the future, no matter what device you're coming from.
Yep.
All right. Well, let's keep rolling here. Enhanced enrollment profile, Citrix endpoint management. So the Zen mobile solution moved into an endpoint management type of solution over the past year or two, and enhanced enrollment profile. Which one do you guys want to jump on this one?
I can take this one. So this is really comes down to like it says, the enrollment profile, the enrollment method. So there in the article, it lists MDM, MAM only, and BYOD. And then of course there are others. Historically in the old Zen mobile framework, these were set at the site level. So users had to enroll in MDM, and that was pretty much it. If you wanted some to be MAM and some to be MDM, it was a bit more complex. Now it sounds like you can do that based on the user group within the organization. So you can say this group of users, which might be just regular task workers, they get the full MDM, which is where the device is enrolled and managed and secured by IT, or MAM only, which is mobile application management, essentially where the applications are delivered to the device, very similar to BYOD, but they don't manage the device itself. So if you're talking about an iPhone, for example, MDM, if it's under MDM management, then that device can be completely controlled. It can be wiped, reset, and such. So you obviously wouldn't want to have end user devices that are enrolled in MDM that have their pictures on them and things of that nature, because that device is fully controlled by IT. Whereas most users today go to the mobile application management process, since that just manages the apps. So the IT doesn't have control of the entire device, but historically that was something that was done at the instance level of Endpoint Manager, and now we can do it at the group level and divide them up based on use cases.
Yeah, we used to have that problem at XenTegra, right?
Yes.
If you enrolled your device, you had to be careful not to say yes to the MDM one, because at that point, the whole device was under XenTegra control.
Correct.
Ben, any thoughts on this topic?
Yeah, some of my thoughts are around, I wonder how the work from home scenario has pushed this. For me, in my old career, we had two sets of users. We had users that were corporate issue devices. We had those things locked down. We gave it to the employee. We said, this is for work, nothing else. If you do anything else on it, we're going to know about it. Very controlled environment. Then we had another set of users that we were like, hey, it's your device. We want to set this little container of information for you to interact with. If something goes south, we'll erase that container of information, but, we'll leave the device under your control. So again, I see, Citrix basically getting more granular in their ability to manage situations like that, because to everybody's point, before that, it was very hard to have those two sets of groups and be able to manage them eloquently and be able to get their enrollment just right. with this solution, we're able to pinpoint the user specific that we need to and what pieces they need to be enrolled in and delivered. So again, I just see us getting more granular, but I do have to wonder if some of this was pushed because of the work from home environment and now companies having to, roll out their resources to different types of users with different types of needs, with different types of devices.
Yeah, it definitely was cumbersome. So I'm sure that the more devices, the more use cases, the more needs only made it more important to get this one solved. It definitely created a challenge for us with new users and re-registering users and devices. It seemed like half the time it ended up being wrong and we'd have to go back and redo it. Okay, number 7 here is Citrix Secure Internet Access. I just learned about this one a couple weeks ago. I guess based on the call or conversation prior to us jumping on hitting the record button. I'll jump on this one first. Citrix is continuing to try to add value into what they do for end users, whether the end user is using a virtual app or desktop or not. What Citrix has done here is they've created a solution where you get a CASB type of scenario where a user's outbound internet traffic and requests and workflow is now being monitored and evaluated for more analytics use cases, which is where a lot of this stuff's going in the future. So Citrix has now added secure internet access to their offerings, so that if you want to keep an eye really on what your end users are doing and try to make sure they're not doing bad things to themselves or the company, that's now part of the Citrix solution. I do wonder. And maybe the fact that it's in this article is kind of interesting. I do wonder if that will be part of the Workspace suite offerings in 2021. I guess time will tell. Ben, do you know any more about this part of the story?
No, I'm still continuing to learn on this myself. I do think that it's interesting that Citrix is becoming a security company. That's the direction that all these products are leaning. And again, I think it's another stance of giving complete visibility to your Citrix environment, not only to what apps, files, and desktops are being used, but now we're looking at, the user performance, their experience level, but we're also looking at and trying to, control and protect the outbound data flow with this as much as we are the inbound. So again, I see it being another step in security to Citrix trying to get into the security environment. And man, I'm proud of it, dude. I think it's awesome that we're offering these services, and I can't wait to see where this is going in the end. I still have a lot of questions being an internal employee myself on this, and they're slowly, letting information out. But again, I kind of see the writing on the wall that it's just another spoke in our wheelhouse in our security picture and what our analytic picture is going to be able to do for you. Not only showing you what the users are doing inside your environment, but also showing us a little bit of a window of what the users are trying to do outside the environment.
Yeah. So I have a couple things. One, for me, Citrix has always been a security company, even though you can't really run around talking about that too much, or at least marketing doesn't. But the idea that, a traveling user can't pull down files or even print stuff from within their session is just an awesome security play. But from a really, a tactical perspective here, the idea that you could have a CASB type solution, that the agent wasn't an additional agent you put on your machine, it was just part of the Citrix Workspace app that you already have on your machine. That's a win from an administrator perspective that, as silly as it sounds, gets me a little excited to know that there's just one less piece of software to have to put on the endpoint. Bill, any thoughts on this topic?
No, I agree with both of you. This is really a key security play, and this is something I think, as I mentioned on the call, before the call, it's not something that I really knew existed. Didn't know much about this, so I'm learning on this call just like everybody that's listening.
Where it's really going to get interesting, I think, is if you can have a user accessing a virtual app or desktop through ICA, and the CASB solution kicks in on the endpoint as well as in the session, and can real time monitor things and create actions like disconnect you from the desktop when it sees you potentially doing something you shouldn't be doing. That is going to be interesting to see how this technology plays into the Citrix stack.
Yeah, I agree.
Well, I also think it's going to be interesting to see how this bounds with our SD-WAN product and being able at the edge to make decisions of, do we send them out a WAN traffic back to headquarters, or do we send them out internet traffic directly? And then are we able to control that? So, it's going to be real interesting to me to see how the product rolls out, see how customers use the product, but see also how the product, interacts with other products like our SD-WAN product, and then how you really can create a single pane of glass managing multiple facilities and, get the best use out of your network resources.
Yeah. Should be exciting to see what Citrix does with that in 2021. All right, number 6, something we covered on here before: app protection policies. Bill, you want to go back into your Wayback Machine and talk about this part of the...
Sure. Yeah. So this really comes down to, it's another security play here, and the ability to disable or mitigate any key logging or screen capture capabilities that might exist in HDX sessions. So this scrambles the keystrokes and blanks out the screen capture, so that an attacker that has compromised the endpoint can't actually get into the virtual instance of the application or the desktop. And of course, obviously, screenshot. There's malware that actually will take screenshots and turn them into pictures, and if they do that with a HDX session that has this feature enabled, it'll just be blank.
Yeah, it's funny. I'm starting to see that most of these best of are things that we covered in podcast unknowingly. I guess there is a correlation there. Ben, any thoughts on app protection policies? Is that a topic customers want to talk about a lot?
Oh yeah. Well, and how I approach this with customers is, when you go SaaS, the IT team and IT administration loses a little bit of ownership in the application. And this particular product is a way for the IT team to gain some ownership back to the application. So let's talk about an HR SaaS application. When I implemented one of those in my old administrator days, what happened to me was I found out that people were using the time clock not on site. And that was bad, because we kind of lost control of the users, our ability to, roll and manage out the time clock. So what we did was we came back and we said, hey, we're going to geofence the time clock to just our facilities. We're going to publish that time clock through Citrix, and we're going to force people to come back into Citrix to gain access to that time clock. Well, this kind of goes into that hand. If you geofence a SaaS application, you now have gained ownership back of the application of, rolling it out, and you can use Citrix to roll that out. And as Bill was saying, you add these extra security layers on there. With medical data or legal data, you don't want users to be able to copy and paste that straight out of a SaaS into Notepad or in the email. And so again, we give you that security overlay to prevent those sorts of things: copying, pasting, screenshotting, printing. And so what I tell administrators is that this particular product is a way for you to gain ownership back to those SaaS applications that you've lost a little bit of ownership by the fact that they're not being rolled out and procured by the IT team. So again, I see it being a security play. Very proud of the fact we're doing this, but I also see it being a way to allow our customers to gain some visibility and control back over their application environment.
Yeah, I mean, with accessibility comes concern, and what Citrix has done here is giving you a way to do both, right? And really target that security concern. Again, for 30 years almost, well, 20 years now, been providing Citrix applications through Citrix as a SaaS app, even though it wasn't really a SaaS app. And that created security concerns, but now you have ways to tackle even something as difficult to tackle as a screen print or a picture taken of the screen.
Yep.
Come a long way for sure. Okay, number 5, Bill, we did a podcast on this one too. HDX Adaptive Transport Gateway Service, modern high performance VPN-less access. I think what this is really talking about is the ability to break out some of those sessions and go straight to Office 365 or other things on the fly. Bill, you want to cover this one since we covered?
Yeah, that's a big part of it. I mean, the other part of it is obviously it references, this section references adaptive transport, which is also referred to as the EDT protocol, which is essentially UDP based. So it helps those long haul connections that it doesn't have all the overhead that the traditional TCP stack has. This is something that's been available in the Citrix ADC gateway or Citrix gateway on premises for a while, and they've added it now into the gateway service. So it supports more than just the virtual apps and desktops. And then, of course, the breakout to Office 365 and other SaaS-based apps is part of the gateway service as well. So HDX Adaptive Transport is really just about optimizing the delivery, making it faster, hopefully, more robust, more resilient to network outages or network hiccups or jitter, so forth.
Ben, any thoughts on this one?
I mean, just HDX technology in itself is just awesome. The ability to channelize the protocol, to be able to pay attention to things like video, to be able to, is this particular feature saying to be able to offload that and be able to make intelligent routing decisions to take you directly to the resource versus back to the data center. I mean, I've done a lot of webinars on HDX this year, specifically how it, allows you to do VPN lists and all that. It's just an awesome protocol, man. And so this is just another example of how it's superior over RDP and VPN. And, hate to be boisterous about it, but, when you really peel back the onion on the HDX service and what it can do and the power it has, it's just amazing to me.
Yeah. And I think, and I'll get on my soapbox here for a minute, HDX, right? That's a marketing term for all the different things Citrix can do with their user experience. But specifically here, we're talking about the protocol itself and being able to route the more advanced protocol through the gateway service or directly out to somewhere else like SaaS-based applications. That HDX story is, you read a whole book on the HDX stuff. There's so many different plays around what Citrix has done for user experience, which probably said it 20 times on these podcasts. The fact that we're taking what normally would have come across the system board to a display graphic card, if even that, up to the monitor and putting that across networks that are hundreds, if not thousands of miles apart is just amazing that it works as well as it does. All right. Citrix Virtual App and Desktop Standard for Azure. I think this is the Citrix DAS play, right, guys?
Yes. Yeah, that's what it is.
Yep. Anything to point out, highlight here, Bill?
Well, I mean, there's a lot of things in this one. I mean, this was formerly known as CMD or Citrix Managed Desktops, and this is now rebranded as Azure, as Virtual Apps and Desktop Standard for Azure. So this is several things that can be done here. Obviously, you can spin up desktops in Azure, but one of the key things here is integration and leveraging an integration with WVD, the ability to leverage WVD instances that are not domain joined. So the ability to create a really small, agile environment that allows users to connect without having to have Active Directory or traditional Active Directory. And there's lots of other things here that customers get from some Virtual Apps and Desktop Standard. But I don't know, certainly Ben might know more about the ins and outs of this than I do at this point.
So two big things I'm hearing with this. One is the second bullet point here, scalability and performance. Yep. I've never done, just straight WVD, but from what I understand, scaling WVD is difficult to do at best. So on our side, we're able to give you, ability to publish in Azure, be able to scale in Azure, and again, all from one pane of glass. The other feature I'm hearing with this is more on the cost side. For customers that don't want to have two bills, they don't want to have a bill from Citrix for the Citrix cloud services, and they get an Azure from the hosting services. This is a way for customers to be able to consolidate that into one bill, and essentially, in my opinion, one throat to choke. you're buying this from Citrix. Citrix is going out and procuring the Azure piece for you for the infrastructure, but you're not having to deal with them. You're basically dealing with Citrix. So the two things in my circle that I've heard that makes this a really awesome service, is the scalability and our ability to be able to do that behind our pane of glass better than what you get with just native WBD. And then again, the single cost factor. You're not having to pay two bills. You got one throat to choke. You got one management team to deal with. So those are the two big things that I'm hearing with this particular service. I think this is going to be awesome going forward. People are looking to simplify their environment, and I think this is one of the features that we can bring in front of them to help them, one, flatten out their cost, two, be able to scale inside of an environment, but also, being able to take some complexity off of their hands and some resources off their hands.
So I'll add one other piece of that. Yes, everything you just talked about on number 4, but also includes everything that comes along with number 5, the HDX piece. I hear people talking about all the time about using maybe a different solution to get desktop as a service, and those use RDP, and that's great. But user experience is still number one thing that matters here. And so being able to get Citrix desktop as a service, but getting the HDX features that come with what we talked about and a whole lot more on number 5, that's the real win here. And then, as Ben pointed out, other things around, security, I don't know what we talked about, but security and one throat to choke from a management as well as a cost perspective, that's the nirvana of all this. And again, the user experience with Ben's examples there and what's documented here in the bullets, that's the real win here. Before we let that one go, Bill, any other points on that one?
No, but Ben wrapped it up really well. There's a lot of things in this, and I would encourage customers to look at this blog article in particular. There's lots of other pieces that go along with this. And to Ben's point, one of the key ones, or two of the key ones, one of which is the ability to scale it up and down really easily, and the other, which I don't know that we mentioned, is that this has its own or a really streamlined user interface for provisioning and deprovisioning desktops that Citrix built specifically for this version, so it makes it a lot simpler for customers.
Yeah,
it's almost too easy.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
All right, number 3, and this is probably the one Citrix, the company, would want you to most focus on because it's getting you away from thinking about Citrix, the Microsoft app and desktop presentation for remote user company, to thinking more about Citrix as a holistic play, and that's the micro app integration piece, where not only are you getting x86 apps and desktops, but you're getting SaaS apps and integrating that with intelligence as well as single user identity and simplified authentication methods. Ben, you're the Citrix guy. We'll let you jump on this one first.
I'm really excited about this because, Andy, you and I have talked for years about at what point can you get users off of the Windows desktop and onto a portal that will, basically lock them into what they need to do. And that's what this micro app workflow is all about, man. Today we're building micro apps for applications like Workday, Salesforce, SAP, but we're also building the ability to do custom API integrations with applications that we're not building out of the box micro apps for. And that's where I see an opportunity for companies like yours, Andy, to come in here and help customers kind of understand what micro apps do and how they might benefit their organization. Like for me, coming from healthcare, if there was a way that I could say to a doctor, you don't have to use this huge application Epic anymore. I'm going to take the 10 things that you do on a daily basis, and I'm going to bring those into Workspace as micro apps and let you work from Workspace, and that will be interacting with the Epic. So everything you do in Workspace will flow back down to Epic and get into Epic, but you won't have to go into Epic and have this click fatigue getting to the module that you need. We'll bring that functionality into Workspace. And I think that's what this whole micro app workflow is all about, is, being able to interact with the big monolithic apps and getting employees to the jobs and the resources they need to use and do on their daily basis. So again, I love that we're building these pre-built templates in here for some of the larger applications, but I'm also more excited about what companies like yours can do and how you can help smaller businesses, grow into these types of technologies.
Yeah, and that's certainly an area we've got to focus on next year, is helping people see what they can do beyond the traditional Citrix story, and more SaaS application integration and intelligence that go along with that is certainly something that we're expanding our capabilities on, and the ability to even write APIs for apps that don't have APIs so that those services can exist to be tied into. That's a big part of what we know our future is. Bill, thoughts on this topic?
No, not a whole lot. One thing that I would love to see, the demo warrior thing that Ben did with the ER app and the integration with Teams. If that's something he could show at some point, I think that would be fascinating to see the use of micro apps in a healthcare scenario that's really kind of real world.
Yeah, I was going to bring that up earlier, Ben. If you want to at some point do the demo and maybe record it as a podcast, if that's appropriate, that would webinar/podcast.
I'll need to go to the powers that be, but let me go ask, man. I would love to demo that for you. It was really cool. Now, some of it, not to give away any secret sauce here, but you're dealing with that wireframe environment. So some things we're able to do without the back end. We can make the front end kind of gloss, but we don't necessarily have the back end. But I've had a few developers take a look at it, because demo warriors, what they want you to do with demo warriors is they want you to really get outside the box. They want you to bring something that we haven't seen before. So what I'm talking to the demo warriors guys about now is, let's light this thing up. Let's get this thing where it's actually truly interactive and it's not in this wireframe environment anymore. But again, man, I just see this really being the directions that companies are going to need to go to, man. The retraining of Windows gets exhausting. It exhausted me trying to do it for 25 years, and I never could get ahead of it. Customers, users somewhat can do that, but they never have the greatest tips and all that jazz. You bring them in the workspace, it just flattens out the environment. Again, you're feeding them what they need to do instead of them having to do it on their own. So I'm really excited to see where this technology is going, and really excited to see, again, what companies like yourself are going to be doing to innovate this and driving customers in this direction.
Yeah. All right. Let's keep going here. We're going to run out of time. Our scheduled hour, basically. Citrix Analytics for performance. We talk a lot about analytics for security, but for performance, Bill, you want to take this one first?
Yeah, I mean, this is really about managing analytics, aggregating them and showing graphs and charts, and to give you key performance indicators of the environment. So this is they performance analytics in particular, they came out with in 2020. I think we might have done a podcast that covered a little bit of this, or maybe it was just coming out at that point. But this is really about trying to understand what the performance is like for your end users before they start complaining, so that you can solve problems proactively rather than the reactive manner that we've always had to deal with. So this is a cloud-based service that your administrators and help desk can access to try to analyze performance issues before they become problematic in the environment.
Been any first?
I see this being in the NOC. To be real honest with you, you walk in there and you see the screen that's got all the stats on it that kind of tells you where. I see this being in the Citrix NOC, because this will definitely tell you how the environment's running. I have been very excited to see this progress through 2020, because for me, for the Citrix admins, man, this is going to be a great troubleshooting tool. So if you're sitting at your desk and all of a sudden the support phone becomes a Christmas tree and you've got all calls coming in, you could go into this and you could very quickly zero in on where is the issue coming from. And if you have a tool that can get you started, the rest of it just is downhill from there. So I think from a Citrix admin viewpoint, this is going to be a great, monitoring tool, maintenance tool, making sure your environment is healthy, but it's also going to be a great troubleshooting tool if you get in the mix of a problem.
Yeah, I go back to being a Citrix admin back in the day, and just having a real-time tool like this, it allows me to see something developing, and like you mentioned, having a knock, and seeing this on a big screen somewhere and starting to see the graph going up and to the right and trying to figure out why that is prior to getting that first phone call. Just hugely beneficial.
Exactly.
Yeah, we've had situations where this has showed us where problems were being identified in the environment, but guess what? It wasn't Citrix problems. They were problems coming from another source. Like this tool actually told some engineers that a internet provider was having a problem in a certain area. They got a slew of calls, and they were able to go in this thing and realize that the calls were coming from a certain region. And then when they started looking at the results of those calls, they started realizing that it was bandwidth issues. So they then started reaching out back to the users going, hey, reach out to your ISP. And they discovered that the ISP was having an issue in that general area. So again, I think this is going to be a great troubleshooting tool for Citrix admins.
Yeah. All right. Well, we made it to the final one here. It's listed as number 1. I'm not sure if it's in order of precedence or release or how they numbered these, but the Citrix Virtual App and Desktop Automation Configuration Tool. This is the one, right, guys, that allows you to take your on-prem solution and migrate those settings either as a test or for production use case into Citrix as a service cloud offerings. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's what it is. It think about a lot of customers have invested a lot of time and manpower in developing their delivery groups and their machine catalogs and their policies and settings and all the other things in the on-premises environment. And if you've got hundreds or thousands of Citrix policies, it's a real chore to try to replicate that in the cloud manually. And this gives us the ability to do that in an automated way using PowerShell and other tools. And so that's one of the key things here is to migrate all those settings and such from on-prem to the cloud as you move and make that migration to the Citrix Cloud service.
Now I'm an SC. I'm bound to my lab. Have you seen this in the field yet? Has this been run? Like, have y'all unleashed Harvey Green on this and let him run this in the wild yet?
I don't know. I mean, it hadn't been around too long. I think my conservative approach would be maybe to run it, but not let it do it. Just to see what it would show. You guys may have heard me talk about this in the past, but historically, my family has moved a lot. We haven't moved outside of the area we live in, but we buy a house, we fix it up, and then we sell it and buy another one. There's a lot of good that comes out of moving in terms of cleaning up and getting rid of stuff you don't use and things that are broken that you just threw back on a shelf somewhere along the way. I'm a big fan of maybe using a tool like this to see what it can show me proactively, but I still want to go through and decide whether I'm getting rid of that piece of whatever or not when I'm making my move.
Yeah, that's definitely a benefit for sure, Andy. And we've had a couple of projects where this was discussed, and the customer decided that they would rather do it manually. To be honest with you, these weren't huge environments, but we had one of them where the consultant went ahead and ran the tool, to your point, Andy, and reviewed the results with the customer, and then they elected to go ahead and do it manually. It is rather involved, but from what I've seen in tests, it works pretty well.
Yeah.
Wow. I think it'll be a great time saver. Now, I would love to run it in the wild, and to your 2 points, see what it comes up with, what changes it's going to look like in the cloud. And I could see where some customers go, maybe this is not worth the forklift to do it. So this has been a barrier for some customers going to cloud, is just recreating the environment and the time it would take to do that. And so my hope is that this tool will, give us the ability to convince those that are a little leery of it that this is an easier path. But again, man, I'm an SC. I'm bound to the lab environment. I have not seen this run in the wild yet, and so I'm looking forward to when we have a client that utilizes this tool, so I can just see what it does. So that's interesting. But I think this is going to be great in getting customers more comfortable to moving to cloud and what exactly that's going to look like once they've done the process.
Yeah. Yeah, at the very least, it can't hurt to at least run it and see what it shows. And ideal world, right, Ben? If they got it all cleaned up and on all the on-prem stuff is nice and tidy, then hit the button and let's go. I just don't know how real that is outside of the lab, like you're pointing out. Okay, guys. Well, we got to the end of this one. I appreciate it. I think we've had a really great 2020 in terms of podcasts. I don't know about the rest of what happened in 2020, but I appreciate, Ben, you joining us for the second fourth of these, and hopefully you're planning on hanging out with us in 2021. And Bill, as always, I appreciate you jumping on and giving us real world insight from what you guys are seeing on the project side.
Yep, sure. Well, Ben, I've enjoyed having you on these things, and hope you would continue to do so going forward. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, man, I've enjoyed it. As I've always mentioned, this gives me another arsenal to learn. Like, there's a couple of things in this 10 list here that I want to go back and kind of sharpen my saw on, just to make sure I know all the ifs, ands, and buts about it. Man, there's always another book to read on the shelf, and so I definitely appreciate you guys having me involved in this. And yes, if you'll allow me to attend in 2021, I'll be more than happy to attend, and I look forward to it. And I look forward to meeting some of our listeners as we get things fired back up in 2021. So if you're listening and we're at an event and you see me, man, please come up, introduce yourself. I want to build a community, and I want to be part of the community. And so I appreciate it, everybody. And I hope everybody has a great new year. And I, like everybody else, am looking forward to 2021 and getting out of my cage here in the office.
Yeah. Well, hopefully it comes back. If not quickly, at least slowly comes back, and we can do something maybe at Synergy 2021 or 2022 and have a get together. Something came to me as you guys were saying that. A lot of times you see communities like this that are built through podcasting or webinars or whatever that eventually turn into more of a user group. One thing to point out right away, if you maybe LinkedIn's the easiest way to do it, but if you want to find Bill, myself, or Ben on LinkedIn and just send us a message and tell us your thoughts, or also if you want to request a certain topic be covered, that's great. In addition to that, don't be surprised in 2021 if we don't do maybe a quarterly get together and have someone present to us real time, and we use this podcast as a forum to get that organized.
Yeah, that'd be great.
All right. With that, guys, I'll let you go. Have a great rest of the week and a happy new year. Hopefully you have some type of plans, if not physical, virtual. And, we were talking about that at home. It's going to be interesting. Are they going to drop the ball in New York or not?
I don't know.
I wondered about that yesterday. I mean, they obviously are going to curtail the celebration, but I wondered, there was an advertisement on TV yesterday for the Rockin' Christmas, so they're planning on that. I mean, the Rockin' New Year. So we'll have to see. It'll be interesting. Yeah, I guess technically they could virtually drop the ball, and none of us would know the difference, would we? Nope, that's true. All right, guys. Well, enjoyed it, and we'll talk again next time. Thanks. Thanks, Andy. Happy New Year, everybody. Yeah, Happy New Year.
Thank you for listening to the Citrix Session with your hosts, Andy Whiteside and Bill Sutton. A special thanks to our guest for attending today's podcast. Podcast produced by Pete Downing. For any input, or if you'd like to be a part of our podcast, please email us at info@XenTegra.com. Please head over to XenTegra.com/podcast to listen to all podcasts in this series. This podcast is copyrighted by XenTegra LLC.